I would say my generation,
Yeah.
we as parents, we tend to, I want to give my children everything I didn't have,
Well, that is
right?
also bad.
Yes, perfect. And some of the trauma that we experienced from our parents, we didn't heal it. So now we don't want our children to experience it. So we sometimes go to the other extreme, which is sometimes end up being passive, end up allowing them too much power with little
Yeah.
responsibility. What we could pull from the older generation is commitment. So the
Yes.
older generation was committed. Once daddy, I am a protector provider, even though I'm talking to you, I'm protecting and providing. Right? Mommy, even though I don't like daddy or you get me vexed or I'm tired, I stand up and do all the domestic work. That's commitment. So I taken that for sure.
Welcome to Man's Story. Johanse Ayodike believes that all individuals have the power to create positive change in their own life, but may not always have the tools. One path to help tap into this power is through the understanding of human behavior. As a result, Johanse pursued his education in psychology in Baltimore, Maryland, USA, then gained qualifications and experience with the Maryland Board of Counselors and Therapists and working within the Baltimore healthcare system. Johanse returned to Trinidad and Tobago in 2011 and has continued his knowledge and growth in the field of behavioral change by pursuing a master's in forensic counseling at Caribbean Nazarene College. He has worked in the private, public, and non-profit sectors. He is the owner of IODK Consultancy, whose aim is to simplify the approach to mental health and positive behavioral change. He has co-hosted and was a guest on various radio programs and is currently featured weekly on CNC3's television morning show. All right, so welcome to Man's Story. Johanse,
Thank
how are you
you.
doing?
I real good man.
Nice, nice. So tell us, who is Johanse?
My name is Johanse Obika Ayodike. Johanse means God's gift. Obika means family supreme. And Ayodike, Ayo means joy and Dike means strength.
Well, you have all of the best names.
Yeah, my parents were very meticulous in how they chose the names for me. Well, I started with the definition of my name because I believe that names in general, but the names in general define who we are, but I will
Nice.
also say it defines who I am because Johansi means God's gift. So if I am God's gift to my parents and by extension God's gift to the earth, then I have to behave as such and I have to accomplish as such. And then Obika means family supreme. And that sentiment is not just talk, it's actions, especially by my mother. My mother is somebody who's very instrumental in bringing together family and being very family oriented. So for me, I understand what she's doing and I extend it now even to people who may not be my blood family but who resonate highly with me. I also consider them family. And Ayo DK, Ayo means joy and DK means strength. And if we're going from a biblical point of view, the joy of the Lord is your strength. So for me, it's to go through life joyous and looking at everything as excitement. And that joy will be the thing that takes me through, keeps me through, and that is my strength. So all in all, I would say put together, that is who I am. If I'm going by profession, I am a behavior change specialist and I enjoy helping people. I enjoy helping people discover their full potential as I discover my full potential. And it takes a certain degree of strength to push past these things or the obstacles that may be preventing us from accomplishing our full potential.
Interesting. Interesting. So, what is a behavioral change specialist, and why did you go into that field?
What it is, firstly, I studied counseling and psychology. So, I mean, by profession, I could be considered a counselor, but I also did coaching and it's really not limited to counseling. However, I can help an individual, a group, a couple, an organization, a group, etc., or family change their behavior in a positive manner, I will help them do it. So it could be through counseling, it could be through therapy, it could be through giving them a call at certain times to remind them to study. It could be helping them have more confidence presenting, more confidence being out in social settings, it confidence in terms of their competence in doing things around the house. I just thinking of different things that I've helped people with is actually just formulating a plan and executing a plan to help anyone positively change their behavior.
And on that note on behavior, what was your childhood like? Were you a troublesome child? You used to behave properly?
Um, I think I was a troublesome child, right? Um, I remember giving trouble. I remember coming up with creative ways to, like say, beat the system. So if it's something I wasn't supposed to do, I'd come up with creative ways. So I guess by definition, I probably was I would say more a miserable and inquisitive child. I didn't really used to give trouble, right? And I think my parents would attest to that I wasn't troublesome, but I was probably a little miserable, in
Energetic.
Caribbean terms. Energetic, yes, inquisitive, pushing the limits. Things I guess children are supposed to do.
See it, see it, see it. All right. No, one of the things that we always try to talk about is the importance of young men having an identity. And oftentimes we see in the news instances where we have a lot of crime. I'm sure you're familiar with the statistics. 90% of gang members come from fatherless homes, and 85% of youth come from fatherless homes. So there's a vacuum that is present, and there is a need for that vacuum to be filled. And unfortunately, sometimes that vacuum is filled with negative influence. How important do you think a positive male role model is for a young man in today's society?
What's the highest level of importance? Whoever is that highest level of importance, that's how important I think it is.
Right, right. And what have you seen in your own journey in terms of professionally? Have you seen a need, or have you seen evidence of change when there is a positive male impact in the lives of your clients or your friends or family?
Definitely. Mm, I would say I have a large percentage of clients who are single mothers with sons. And most times they bring them to me because even before they meet me, whatever is their impression of me is a positive male figure. So
Right.
that in itself, they want a positive male figure. And the differences, and I would say not even by my observation versus the observation of the mothers or the families, because they would know the before and the after better than I would.
Mhm.
They report um, positive change in terms of the boys becoming more mentally and emotionally stronger. So they are able to finish things that they are doing. They're able to have especially increase their mental resilience. So before the things that may have bothered them or they may have felt offended by certain things or um, may have been a bit soft towards certain things, they are willing to take up challenges more. That's a major difference. So I could say for my positive influence and also what I've seen, when
Right.
there are positive men around, especially males, females also, there is more of I, I want to call it a silent strength or let's call it mental and emotional. They are more grounded. That's better. They
Nice,
both
nice,
male and female, they are more grounded around a positive male influence.
nice. In fact, there are some statistics that agree with that, because generally, once there's a positive role model, children tend to be more emotionally stable. The statistics will agree with that statement for sure. Oftentimes we
Right.
say these things, and it's important for the viewers and the listeners to realize that the statistics agree with what we're saying. We're not just randomly stating these facts.
Right.
Awesome, awesome.
I agree with that. And yes, there are stats, but I mean, I see it. I see it in person. We see it, you know. And the funny thing is, even some, I'll use women first. Women have encountered who sometimes, let's say they have a tumultuous relationship with the child's father. They would always say, well, around the father, the child don't give any trouble. Well, he
Right.
don't give his father or she don't give his father as much trouble as me, you know. So they would, even in their in quarreling about it and complaining about certain things about the child, they would even admit that the child is different when the father is there.
And and on that note, I want to talk about this whole thing that we keep hearing about, toxic masculinity. The My view on that is the issue with society is not toxic masculinity. The issue with society is a lack of masculinity. And the lack of masculinity is therefore toxic, because oftentimes well, let me not put any words in your mouth, but what are your views on that term, toxic masculinity?
I'll tell you a few. One, um, if if there's the talk about toxic masculinity, then it should be a term called toxic femininity also, and
Amen,
then
brother.
which means then it's just toxic behavior. It's not necessarily male or female. So that's one perspective. Another
I
perspective
like that.
is there are some things that men do. So let's say I'll give you an example. If a woman talking about sports, because she's a woman, some men may automatically think she don't know what she's speaking about. Let's call that toxic masculinity because it's something specific to male and female, right? So I'll use that as a caveat also. But
Okay.
then also I agree with what you're saying. The lack of masculinity is also toxic. So I give those three perspectives because hitting it three pronged is a good holistic way instead of just looking at, oh, well, the bad things men do. We looking at it from this holistic point of view, and I think the solution is rediscovering what masculinity should be in this modern time, right? So we're not going back to traditional, we're not going back to what men used to be. We're looking at what men should be for this current time. And I assume that this current time is really specific to the country, to the culture, to even your family, knowing exactly who you should be as a man for your family and what is healthy.
Interesting. Interesting. You know, I often say, on that note about the what was and what we need, I often say that the generations before us were great husbands and wives, while our generation are much better mothers and fathers, because we are in those days, you would stick to one person and you get married, and regardless of the craziness that happens, the marriage continues.
Right.
While in this day and age, that's not the case.
Mhm.
However, there is a stronger push to understand our children, a stronger push to hear what they have to say. Sometimes going too far on that level where, at 8 years old, you're your child's friend. Heck no. No, no, no friend here.
Mhm.
I can appreciate it at an older age, but at 8, I don't think you need to be a child's friend. But I digress. So I think, I'm agreeing with what you're saying in terms of us finding a need to see what is necessary now, and what a man, the definition of a man, what that looks like now. And in that, we need to be better than our forefathers in terms of having a stronger relationship with our sons, because that wasn't necessarily what our forefathers would have had, depending on the context.
Okay.
And what we can take from them is a stronger desire to have that nuclear family, because there is a lot of benefit to that as well.
All right. Response to two things you're saying. One, I think I disagree with you when you say that this generation are better parents. So you're saying the older generation were good husbands and wives, and this generation better parents because they want to understand their children more. I
Right.
mean, maybe so, but I think that this generation eh, may not be better parents. They may be traumatized children who are failed.
All right, I'll work with it. I'll work with it.
Be, because this generation, I'm gonna say this, I would say my generation,
Yeah.
we as parents, we tend to, I want to give my children everything I didn't have,
Well, that is
right?
also bad.
Yes, perfect. And some of the trauma that we experienced from our parents, we didn't heal it, so now we don't want our children to experience it. So we sometimes go to the other extreme, which is sometimes end up being passive, end up allowing them too much power with little
Yeah.
responsibility. So, I mean, what I would say is what we could pull from the older generation is commitment. So the
Yes.
older generation was committed. Once daddy, I am a protector provider, even though I ain't talking to you, I'm protecting and providing. Right? Mommy, even though I don't like daddy or you get me vexed or I'm tired, I stand up and do all the domestic work. That's commitment. So I taken that for sure. With our generation as parents, I think we need to be honest about what we experienced. Be honest with ourselves, with our parents, because we have to heal it with them also, and then be honest with our children, because I think we hold back or we suppress how we really feel because we try to shield our children from it, and in shielding them, they become weak, they become inexperienced, they become sheltered. And then
Right.
with this weak, inexperienced, sheltered behavior, it presents now, it is interpreted as ingratitude. So if we go in with being a man, being a man now, because I'll tell you, I've encountered many men who are quite passive in their relationship, in their marriage, passive in their relationship with their child. So well, I'll just let a woman do whatever she want to do, she will do. Whatever the child want to do, they will do, and just let things go. Because I mean, a lot of times our trauma response in men is withdrawal, right?
Uh,
So I just take in the back seat. Once you leave me alone, don't bother me.
right. Right. Yeah. That's crazy. You're quite right, because one of the things I think is extremely important is for children to have responsibility. And in having responsibility, that is when they appreciate what they have,
Mm-hmm.
and it grounds them. And I think oftentimes, if you spoil a child, if they get anything they want, if there's no no, if there's no resistance, that's a serious issue. Because every time I've seen a child who is listless, who has no drive, no desire to do anything, they don't have any responsibilities. They don't
Mm-hmm.
want to do anything when they reach home.
Correct.
They don't have to answer for the grace. That they have nothing, no resistance whatsoever. In some instances, when it comes down to single parent mothers, it's what tends to happen, and you can tell me if you've seen this as well, is what tends to happen at times is, if the relation, they may translate the relationship with their son to, well, with their partner. The partner is no longer there, so the son becomes the son husband.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a matter of, oh, I do this for you, I do that for you, and there is no training for them to become independent so that they can leave. They want to keep them as dependent as possible, so they stay as long as possible, and
Mm-hmm.
they take over the role that they would have had, that male would have had. We're not talking about the physical role, but or the intimate role, but we're talking about I
Mental,
no longer.
emotional, and psychological.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Have you seen that?
All the time. I would say I even seen that with myself because I grew up in a single female, both my mom and my grandmom, and I think that it is something that is done. It could be consciously, but let's say unconsciously, because the thing is, if the husband leaves, then of course there's a void, and it would be a hurtful thing and a traumatic for the mother. So therefore, especially if it's a boy, they would want to hold on to the boy as much as possible. Yeah,
Interesting.
I'm agreeing with what you're saying, and holding on, if that's somewhere in your mind, even though you may not be doing it consciously, you would want that boy around as much as possible. You would want that boy loyal to you as much as possible. You would want exactly as you're saying, to fill that mental, emotional, and psychological role. So I've seen it with myself. That's something that I had to heal, and probably even still healing some parts of it because it's unconscious. And I've seen it with many of the boys, especially boys, let's say in their early teens, maybe from 12 years old, and they now forming that identity or furthering that identity of themselves and in relation to their mother and other females, etc. I've seen it there, and I would call it the single parent, single mother with son guilt, right? Because we, not only in the Caribbean, I think as any single parent, where it's a boy and a mother, is we don't want to see the disapproval on our mother's face. We don't want to see disapproval on our female's face. So we tend to be trained and live our life to ensure that the female in our lives have no disapproval, and even sometimes to our own detriment.
Right, right. Interesting. Interesting. Quite fascinating, eh? This
Mm-hmm.
thing we call life. You mentioned before
Mm-hmm.
that you've also experienced that. What was your growing up like for you? What was your childhood like?
In terms of my parents, my from my memory, I think my mom and my dad split when I was about 3 years old. So my dad lived um, fairly close, probably a few houses away, but he didn't live with us. So I had the presence of my dad. I could go visit my dad whenever, but he wasn't in the home. And I, let's say I thought that was pretty normal
Mhm.
until my mom and I moved from that house. So we lived, of course, further from my father. So now it was more difficult to see my father. So now I understood what the distance meant,
Right,
right? And I remember yearning for the I don't want to say attention, but the company. Yes, the company of my father, and not getting it, and learning how to accept it and meander through not having it. And I think after a while, I just became accustomed to it. So and I would say I became accustomed to something that is unhealthy. So um, let's say fast forward, I now that my father is back in my life, I think in a more permanent manner, and me now being an adult and not a biological father yet, but I mean, based on my profession, I'm a professional father.
right.
Is an interesting thing to one as I grow, even with my father, uncover some of the hurt or some of the traumatic things that I've experienced with him not being there, and now having to also professionally parent young men. So is learning and healing and execution happening simultaneously.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Fascinating. So what does that feel like? Being in the midst and looking, yeah, let me not put words in your mouth. What does that feel like?
Um, it feels like being at sea, right? I'm a pretty good swimmer, right? So I know how to swim, but of course the water not always calm.
Yeah,
So some days I have it. I could swim through the waters easy, right? Even though it's wide waters, so I could swim through easily. So let me give a good swimming analogy. Some days the water is calm, I could swim and it's easy. Then some days, even though the water is calm and I'm swimming, is a lot of area to cover. So even though it's easy, I'm tired. There's a
yeah.
lot to do. And then some days the water rough and that I can't swim, that I have to tread water. So as I said, it's healing myself, rediscovering the relationship with my father while simultaneously being a professional father for others. So sometimes there's a lot going on. Now the thing is, within all of that is love, healing, positivity. So that's the solace because I am becoming better. The relationship with my father is becoming better. The relationship with these young men, and I say the young men because it's anywhere from 8, and I deal with men from 8 all the way to 40, 40s, 50s. So is learning to be a professional father, a better son, also a brother, is a quite interesting path in understanding myself as a man.
What would you say to a young man, let's say a 14, a 12, or a 15-year-old who doesn't have that father there? What, how, what would you say to him? How should he go about maneuvering life? You know,
Research men, right? Research as many men as you can. So just learn about different types of men. It don't matter. It could be what we consider good men, bad men, indifferent men, etc. Just learn about all different kinds of men from different cultures, from different religions, from different everything. Just learn as much as you can about men. So then, what would happen now? And let's use it from a theoretical point of view: is you would now have so much knowledge about men, you could now start to decide and piece together what kind of man you want to be. So I say that's first. So you have the knowledge. Then, of course, is that there's the application. So I would say, and this takes a little more discernment, but try to be in as many groups of males and boys and men as possible, so you can understand. Now I'm saying groups because you know sometimes we don't know the type of people out there in terms of um, being predators and preying on somebody, and especially if you're a young man who's yearning for male attention, you may be in a vulnerable position. So that's why I'm saying more groups. I mean, it's a jungle we live in, and nowhere is exactly safe. So if you're
yeah,
coming first from a theoretical point of view, you're even able to see things. So let's say from a theoretical point of view, you learn about grooming, right? And you never experience it, but you learn about it. At least when you're in a situation, you can start to identify, hey, these are some red flags. And conversely, you learn about the good things and the positive things about male leadership and brotherhood and etc. So even though you may not have experienced it, when you're in this situation, you can say, oh, so these are these positive things. I'm now understanding what these are. So I would say start with a theoretical base. And theory don't means deep study and philosophy, although you could do some of that, right?
right.
Just research men in general, sportsmen, actors, engineers, doctors, lawyers, firemen, teachers. It don't really matter. Just different types of men.
And what about the father who wants to, who is not necessarily physically there, but what would you say to him about improving his relationship with his children?
Always be honest. I'll start with that. Always be honest with your children. So even if you can't make it, you promise them to do something, you can't make it, let them know immediately. Even if it will make them sad, it's better to be honest with them and they be sad than you're not honest with them and they find out that you're lying. That's
Mm,
one. Two is go tr- go for consistency over frequency. So you may not be able to see your children, let's say every week or every day. Find something consistent. So let's say it's once a month. Make sure it's a priority. They know every second Friday they get to see daddy. So it's something to look forward to. So even if
right,
you do
right.
that for 10 years, it's better than trying to do it every day and failing.
Mm, okay, okay. And what about the single mothers? What advice would you give them?
Be honest also. Be honest with yourself and the child's father about the situation. Be honest with the child about the situation. Because I've heard some women lie to their, especially their sons, but let's say their children. The
Right.
child say, "Daddy love me," right?
Mhm.
And the mother say yes. But the thing is, the mother don't know most times because and most times is when, of course, let's say daddy don't show up or disappoint the child be wondering, does my father love me? And you would say yes. Yeah, your father love you, but the truth is you don't know. And you should say that. Say, I don't know. Talk to your father, right? So, because if you say yes, then the child will associate disappointment with love, right?
Okay, okay. That's interesting. That's interesting.
So that's one thing I would say. Be honest. Be honest about yourself because, of course, every father leave, there has to be some healing that occur. I'm not saying who fault it is. Don't really matter who fault it is. Why the relationship break up, but there would be healing that you need, right? The father need healing too, but we speaking specifically to the mothers. Let's say you don't even talk to the father anymore. There's some healing that you would need to do. There's some, and of course, that through that healing, be honest with your son or your daughter, right? About their father also, not necessarily bad talk the father or just specifically say negative things, but be honest about your feelings about the situation, etc. So they could understand exactly what you're going through. And then also, if the father wants to be in the child life, give the father the opportunity, give the child the opportunity, even if you don't agree with some of the things the father's doing. Of course, once it's not to the detriment of the child. If you don't agree with it, sometimes you have to let the child come to their own conclusion.
Right, right. And in terms of letting them know what is happening, of course, that would need to be age specific.
Yes, yes, because let's just say mother and father split because they had a physical fight, right? You don't necessarily have to tell the child, hey, daddy cuffed me or I cuffed daddy. You could say we had a disagreement and we realized we couldn't be together anymore. As simple as that, age appropriate. And then if you want to get into details later on as the child grows, etc. But it's always good to let the child know that something occurred so that the child wouldn't be at a loss. And of
Or
course, if they
blame
don't
themselves.
know, they would formulate something. And most times what they formulate would be far from reality. So it's better to have the child in reality, age specifically, than have them come up with some story in their mind that is erroneous.
Awesome, awesome. So, as we stated before, is that there are a lot of issues in relation to crime and the correlation between a positive male influence in a child's life, more specifically their father, and criminal activity. What would you say to a young man who is currently pursuing the criminal activities? What would you say to a youth who is looking and thinking that that's a possibility? What advice would you give to someone like that?
Hmm. That's a hard one, I said hard because it's easier to show them than tell them,
Mm, tell me more.
right? Because if a youth want to pursue crime, and most times that is because of money, right? Quick, fast, easy money, or at least they could actually see how they could get money. It's very hard for me just to say, well, forget a life of crime or forget pursuing crime and come and be a plumber, come and go and study in school to be a doctor or lawyer, right? Because one is deferred gratification and one is almost instant
Instant.
gratification. Versus and this is something I've already done. I would take you to see a doctor. I would take you to see a lawyer. I would give you examples of my own life. So I would show you what successful men who live in doing legal professions can do, and try to give as many of those possibilities to the youth so they could see different ways. And I can tell you, I've taken groups of boys from homes to go to different professions, and it gave them a different perspective. because a lot of times crime, because of the exposure or lack of exposure, crime sometimes is the best option, and that's only one of three options. But now I'm giving you 20 options. So now you could formulate exactly what you want to do and realize that crime mightn't be the only avenue to be a success.
Interesting. Interesting. All right. What about the a young man who wants to become a behavioral change consultant? What how would he go about doing so?
Well, one, academics wise, you study psychology, counseling, uh, behavior, any type of behavior change. You can even start with social work, sociology, etc. But you have to have a love for people, or no, not love. Love is not the word. Curiosity about human behavior.
Mm,
Right? If you have a genuine curiosity about human behavior, then you can become a behavior change specialist, because like any profession, you have to love what it is. And for me, why people do things interests me so much. Not sometimes not even the what, Well, I mean the what first, but it's the why. Why you do what you do? Because let's just say somebody could do something mundane. Let's say they drink a soft drink, right?
yeah.
But the way they drink it, the sound they make when they drink it, how fast they drink it, right? That's intrigued me. So the why. So I could make something like drinking a soft drink into a whole thesis because of how interested I am. So I would say to anybody who thinking about doing behavior change, being a behavior change specialist, being a coach, being a therapist, etc., sometimes it takes a genuine love
A passion for
of,
it.
yeah, an
Curiosity.
interest, a curiosity into human behavior.
Nice, nice. That's important because sometimes children may want to go into something because they're like, hey, this is supposed to be, this looks good, or it makes money, and everybody wants to be a lawyer, doctor, engineer. Um, but it's a matter of, and sometimes parents push them into particular fields as well. But if there is no passion for it, then they'll suffer. They'll be in there and they'll be like, Lord God, why am I here?
Correct, correct.
So taking from what you have said, it's important for you to pursue that which you like, that which you enjoy, not simply because it looks good on paper.
And then you'll make money, I tell you. When you do something you enjoy, you'll make money because the passion that you have, one, it will attract people because people
Ah,
want to be around somebody who's passionate, right? I could tell you many examples. Even I remember going for ice cream already to establishment, and the person who was serving the ice cream was an ice cream expert, as in they asked me some specific questions unrelated to ice cream, and based on how I answered it, they chose a flavor for me, and it was perfect. So I
wow,
just gained everything, and that made me
that's
want to. Of
interesting.
course, now I want to go back there. I want to
Yeah,
patronize. I will send more people there. So
because
if
you
you're
had an
passionate about
experience.
something, yeah, if you're passionate about something, it shows and you will make money, wherever that thing is.
Good stuff, good stuff. Well, Johan said, thank you very much for being on One Story.
Alvin, thank you very much. I appreciate communing with men, communing with men of like minds, communing with men who just want to be better. Even if you want to be 1% better, you're in alignment with me.
Yeah, it's important for us as men to appreciate the importance of continuous improvement. Nobody not perfect.
Hmm.
I always say when people talk about, what is a manly man, I say many things. Somebody who is driven, who has integrity, but most importantly, someone who consistently improves. Because nobody
Yes,
not perfect.
yes.
But just the whole idea of becoming a better version of yourself, that is what is important. So, it's
Hmm.
always good to talk with like-minded people as yourself. We've done a few events together in the past, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate your work, and I appreciate the influence that you have on people. So well done.
Thank you very much, and well done to you too, even for having a forum like this. And this is a good example of being your brother's keeper. Because I can't do everything, you can't do everything, another man can't do everything, but we could do something. And every little thing we do, we could build on it with each other. So it's like any family. You have part of the puzzle, I have part of the puzzle, and when we come together, we create the whole puzzle.
Awesome. All right, have a good one.
All right, perfect, man. Thank you very much, Alvin.